You guys asked for it, so today we are making pizza. We're gonna make the same recipe twice, once with cheap ingredients, once with expensive, to see if there's a noticeable difference. I'm Nate from the internet, and this is Brand vs. Basic. The first thing we tried this experiment on was cookies, and so many of you wanted to see it that I decided I would do pizza as a follow-up. Now, I haven't done a lot of homemade pizza myself, so I went online, and this is mostly a recipe from Adam Ragusea. He's got a lot of great cooking videos, and he's done especially some cool stuff with pizza. I believe he's from New York. He was trying to make New York style pizza, which I love, so that seemed like a great way to start. We're gonna start by making some dough. I've got 2 bowls. I'm going to make mostly one and then the other because this is all just getting up in the all of this is going to end up in the refrigerator overnight anyway, so 10 or 15 minute difference between when I make one and the other shouldn't really throw anything off. The package is 2 1/4 teaspoons, so I don't want all of this. All right, now we are going to let this sit for 5 minutes. It's not necessary for the development of the dough, but it does let us verify that the yeast we're using is alive and active. It can actually die, but just to make sure that everything is going well, we are going to give it that 5 minutes just to be sure we see what we're hoping for.
A few minutes later.
Okay, it's been like all of 1.5 minutes and our yeast is already starting to do stuff. We're still going to give it the full 5 just so I know, but yeah, this is already moving. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. Now we're doing olive oil. Olive oil is one of the biggest cost differences that we're looking at here. This bottle, the Walmart brand, was like a little over $2, like $2.50, something like that. Whereas this bottle, which is more, you know, this is 500 milliliters and, oh no, just kidding, it's not more. They're both 500 milliliters. This one, in fact, is more. This is 502 milliliters. But this one costs like $19 and this one was like $2.50. So next, we're doing our bread flour, and we have here the cheapest bread flour that I could get my hands on. And Adam talks about how he does 5 cups, and he specifies that he does it by volume. And partly that's because this mixture doesn't get finalized with what I put in right now. As I'm mixing up the dough, if it's too wet, then I'm gonna be adding more flour to make it so it's less sticky, like I can actually maneuver it around. And so the amount that actually ends up in the dough might change based on how the flour reacts to the water. Five. All right, so there's the 5 cups that I'm starting with. After I mix it, if it's too wet, like I said, I may have to add more. Okay, this is looking like a very wet dough. Arm's doing just fine. This is not as intense as the cookie dough, and that's about all of the spoon mixing I have to do. Now I have to go to the hand mixing. That is absurdly sticky. I feel like I need a lot more flour still. This is the stickiest dough I have ever worked with.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Good, I'm back to having tired forearms. I was missing that. We're gonna take our barely manageable dough. We're gonna throw it into some containers. Okay, I have a total of 1,398 grams. Man, I wish I had those last 2 grams. About 1,400 grams. We're gonna round. My math skills are not so good. I'm gonna go for 350 grams of dough per container. Time for the fancy one. When I said I was going with the cheapest and the most expensive with all the ingredients, I meant all of the ingredients. So for the cheap one, I use tap water. It's the cheapest source of water I have. But for the expensive one, I am using a wildly overpriced bottle of water. that I got at the store. I paid money. I paid way too much money for this water. Will my fancy water make fancy pizza? So I'm gonna see if I can tell a quality difference. No, that's water. I want to take just a second and show the difference between the not yet developed gluten and developed gluten. So here is the not developed gluten. This, if I try and stretch it thin, it just starts immediately opening up. It tears, it doesn't stick together, the stretch isn't really there, it just kind of rips. All right, been kneading this for about 10 minutes, and it is so much stretchier. I'm not saying it's not going to tear, but it gets so thin and stretched out before it tears. We let all of our dough sit in the fridge for at least 24 hours, and then it'll be time to move on to making the rest of the pizza. All right, we've given the dough a couple of days, and now we are ready to make our pizzas. But first, we gotta make some sauce. So we've got all of our ingredients, the basic, the brand. Time to make some sauce. Let's see if we can turn you something a little saucier. Now, I don't know if it's a function of being the more expensive version, but the more expensive can has a tab. Don't have to use the can opener. Now the mentioned recipe included a pinch of sugar, half a tablespoon of the cheap stuff, half a tablespoon of the expensive stuff. All right, it says some dried oregano. I don't know how much is some, so I'm gonna start with a teaspoon. Over here we have our expensive dried oregano, which is it's freeze-dried leaves, and it's not very much, it's 0.14 ounces. And so by the pound, if you were to buy a pound of this particular oregano, it would cost over $600. There we go. Spilled another bit on the counter. We're not going to count that toward our cost. That's just me being bad at cooking. He also recommends adding a lot of olive oil. Again, not a specified quantity, so I am kind of guesstimating here. I'm going to go with 2 tablespoons for this size. I do want to do just a quick little test to see if I can taste the difference between just the sauces as they are. All right, cheap sauce. Tomatoes, sugar. Hot dang. I don't know what part of the ingredients. I suspect the tomatoes, but this is so much more powerful. Like, most of what I'm getting is an acidic taste. Like, I think Adam in his recipe called it bright. This is very bright. Like, it hits you almost like lemon juice kind of. It doesn't taste like lemon, but the acidity of it is way more potent. I did not expect that. We have our tomato sauces. That is not the right lid. Okay. You'd think I would be able to tell sizes of things by looking at them. You'd be wrong. As I'm getting the dough out of the fridge and ready to transport, this is all of the dough that expanded out of the expensive recipe, and this is all of the dough that expanded out of the cheap recipe. So we had much less overflow with this. Now, when I go to make the pizzas, I'll weigh out the dough so that we have the same amount in both. I just thought it was interesting how much more this expanded. Maybe that's the expensive yeast doing its thing. Okay, we're not cooking the pizzas here. Let's head to where we are cooking them. mic on, but the expensive dough is a very different texture. Like it holds itself together a lot more. It's not stretching as wildly and easily. Alright, we've got our first two pizzas. One is with the basic ingredients, one's with the expensive ingredients. So now it's time for taste test, and I have not said which is which. There have been some guesses, which they can vocalize now if they like, but it's time to taste pizza and see how we like it.
Okay, so I think this one is the bougie, nice one, just because of like the texture and I don't know.
Before we tasted, I thought it was this one, just because you can see like crushed tomato rather than just sauce. And yeah, it tastes. You can actually taste the sauce rather than just greasy cheese. If I'm wrong, I will be really embarrassed, but I'm pretty confident.
See, I agree with you, but I disagree with you on the sauce part.
What?
I think it's the cheese.
No, man, I can't
Cheese
taste the
definitely
sauce.
That tastes like fancier cheese. We're gonna be so wrong.
I think without a doubt, this is the one with more expensive ingredients. It tastes 10 times better, in my opinion. Not even like question.
I'm kind of thinking the closer one to this side is the more expensive one. This cheese tastes familiar. Like the far cheese tastes familiar, but it tasted more like plasticky to me. And this side just tasted like different, which means I'm used to eating garbage pizza, and this one tasted like not garbage pizza. So like the far one tastes familiar, which makes me think it's more garbage and common, and the closer one tasted not familiar, which makes me think I don't normally have this, which means it's probably bougie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want
Regardless of its price.
So if that one's garbage,
tastes
the garbage one's better.
Well, guess what? This is the cheap one.
No way!
100%.
Well, this one's gross.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
I hate it. This sauce is way better.
I can't tell the difference between the cheese.
The same cheese for you?
I can't tell the difference between the cheeses either, but
The
that's...
sauce is drastic.
Isn't that sauce gross?
It's sour.
Yeah.
Like
And it's
massively
like
sour.
thinner.
So I want to make another one and put more effort into getting the dough really nice and thin. See if we have similar results or if anything changes. I think you can start eating.
Okay.
Wait, I actually don't know which one. Oh, no, I can tell.
Authentic, burning the roof of your mouth pizza.
This is the worst one.
Which burns you better, the expensive or the cheap pizza?
Oh, okay. Go get this one then. Quick.
You just took one bite.
I was kidding about that test, but Steve's going for it. Which burns more?
Definitely the cheap one. Ow!
This is my own bias, but since I stretched out the expensive dough, I like the texture of the expensive dough better this time.
It's all about the sauce.
I do like the dough.
I feel like the sauce
better
tastes
this
better.
time. I like the crispiness of both of them, actually.
The thinness of the expensive one has made the crust much better than last time. I do think that what I'm most learning with pizza, the technique of making the pizza is definitely more important than the ingredients used in the pizza. So in the brand versus basic pizza side-by-side competition, which is the winner? Well, my group of friends seemed to think that there wasn't a clear winner based on the ingredients. We were getting a much bigger result based on how we cooked and prepped the pizza. If we were doing a good job getting the crust stretched really nicely thin and the right quantity of ingredients, that was mattering a lot more than if the ingredients cost a lot of money. Cost breakdown in the end. For the cheap pizza, we ended up with an estimated cost of $1.54 per pizza. For the more expensive pizza, we ended up with a cost of $5.66 per pizza. 3.7 times as much for a pizza that it's good, but it's not noticeably better. It really seems to matter more if you're careful getting the crust thin, if you have just the right amount of sauce and cheese. And if you do that, then it's really hard to tell the difference between the two. So I would say if you're trying to make this homemade pizza recipe, which you should because it's quite good, go for the cheap one. If you already have more expensive ingredients, I'm not saying like skip on using them or anything, but to us, to everyone who was tasting it, it really came down more to how you prepared it than whether it cost a lot of money. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Hit that bell to get notifications. And if you want to see me try other things in this brand versus basic idea, let me know what foods you think I should try. A special thank you shout out to my Patreon subscribers. What you're doing really helps me make better and more videos, which means the world to me. If you're interested in joining my Patreon, the link is in the description down below.